that's what we are. We're living in a time of editing, and everybody's edited. And what I always was drawn to was live, unedited shit. It was raw, and it was right in front of you. And if it fucking sucked, it sucked. And if it was
so I've actually been thinking a lot about this channel and just vlogging in general, not only because of the Tim Dillon podcast, which is a really great podcast. You guys should definitely listen, but because I don't know, man, like every time I turn on this camera, it's like this assumption that people give a shit what I do. And maybe you do. That's why you subscribed, but it's also such like a self-absorbed thing. It's like, dude, if I did this in a public space, started talking to a camera when there's people around, like I don't know, I can't wrap my head around that. Like when I had to do that at the Arnold, like I was cringing so hard. But yeah, that's just my thoughts. I don't know why I'm kind of getting into that, but today I want to answer your questions on Instagram about training, and I'll train as well. I don't know where Josh is, but yeah, I'm just going to do some training. It's Sunday, so I think next week I'm going to take a deload, and so I want to have like one more good snatch session, maybe some back squats, and then I'm going to deload all next week. But yeah, I'll be answering your questions and lifting at the same time. I'll put some lifting over the top of it. So let's do this. Here we go. First edit. Stefan Mikas. Westside principles applied to weightlifting analysis. Louis says it works, but there is no evidence. Okay, if we think about the main Westside idea, you have your max strength, dynamic effort, and then the repetition effort, which is the hypertrophy. The max effort, back squat, deadlift, bench press, as heavy as you fucking can. Dynamic effort, do it as fast as you can with really light weights. We're talking anywhere from 50 to 70%. Hypertrophy, train like a bodybuilder. So those are really going to be the three aspects of training that you can mess with. Light weights, really fast. Heavy weights, more slow, but high on the force velocity curve. And then you have hypertrophy, which is just grow your muscles. Those concepts are going to be throughout every training program. Nothing of what Louis said is different. The main thing too is like, if you're going to snatch and clean and jerk, you are automatically dynamic efforting every time you step into the gym. So that aspect of this whole thing being like a conjugate style thing where, okay, today's our dynamic effort day. It's like, no, dude, every day is dynamic effort. So how do we plan our training around that? As far as like the bands and chains and shit goes, sure, use it. I don't care. Do whatever you want to do. Just know that when you get into competition mode, when you're, 8 to 4 weeks out, none of that shit's going to work. If you think it will work, you're going to have to prove it. Yeah, they sound good and they look good on paper, but where the is the proof? Where are the Westside weightlifters that are going to national meets and destroying people? Vitor Parga asks, training routine for people with access to a bar but limited weights, 50% of your clean and jerk max. I've actually talked about this on a podcast, and I've talked about this on numerous Instagram lives that I've done. You're not going to be in shape for weightlifting. I'll never tell you that you will. If you only have access to 50% of the weights of your clean and jerk, you will not be in shape for weightlifting. But that's not a negative thing. That should almost seem like an obvious thing. Like, oh no, I'm going to lose all my gains. It's like, no, make gains other ways. If you think it's a good time to work on your general physical preparedness, like, can you do unbroken sets of 20 push-ups? Can you run a mile in under 7 minutes? Can you do certain things that are pretty normal, healthy, individual things? If you can't, this is a great time to work on them. We all know as soon as this shit lets up, we're going to go right back to our barbells and we'll be able to build right back up to where we are. So what are you doing in the off season now to better yourself? There are a lot of different calisthenics, a lot of different gymnastics things that you can be doing. And I don't want to patronize you and be like, go ahead, pick up this jug and hold it overhead. But like at the end of the day, what are you going to do? For someone like myself, if I didn't have access to this gym and this barbell, I know that I would be focusing on my body composition. That would be my thing, right? Like nailing nutrition. Nutrition would be my Super Bowl. I would try to have those body weight goals, you know, things that a very healthy person could prove to other people. How healthy are you? How fit are you? This is a great time to work on that. Adalberto, how do you program deload weeks? What do you work on? What rep schemes, etc.? That's actually very timely as I'm planning on deloading next week. What I can say about deloads is you are not pursuing adaptation in, not pursuing adaptation in any movement or anything. When we train, we're trying to accumulate fatigue so that our body responds over time. Once we recover, we are stronger. We're faster. We're better at weightlifting. The issue is if you keep accumulating fatigue and you don't give your body that break, recovery never happens. When you are deloading, it doesn't always have to be a certain set or rep scheme. It just has to be easier, noticeably easier than your prior weeks of training. And there's different ideas from different coaches, but one thing I could say is like, it doesn't always have to be, you know, lifts below 80%. If you're in a peaking phase, you'll be snatching and clean and jerking above 90% every snatch and clean and jerk session. That's how peaking phases work because you're getting ready for competition. If you are to take a minor deload from that, one single snatch at 80% is a deload workout. Even though it's relatively heavy to a lot of the rest of your training, that's going to be a lighter day and thus a deload. So the main thing I can say about deloads is just don't pursue adaptation. Don't try to get sore. Don't do any novelty. Just lift, have fun, and get the out the door. Seriously, short sessions like 45 minutes to an hour are money on deloads. Alexander Ogren, how should I plan volume? How should I increase mobility? So that's a two-part question. How do you plan volume? In the beginning, when you're learning, if you're a beginner, it doesn't really matter that much. To accumulate fatigue as a beginner, it's a much different story than accumulating fatigue for someone like myself. I have to be considerate about the amount of volume I use at certain weights. But if you're a beginner, every day is like a new story. Every day is a new experience where adaptation is at its highest. Your sensitivity to training is so low that anything you do will cause you to gain strength. How much volume? Well, you can start by just thinking about time frames. So I'm going to warm up and then snatch for the first 45 minutes. So warm up will be a half hour, snatch will be 15 minutes. Then I'll add in another 15 minutes to 20 minutes of clean and jerking, and then I will add in another 15 to 20 minutes of squatting. From there, you can determine how much volume did I do and what was the overall intensity of that session. Am I able to do more the next time or the next week? Think about it in terms of that if you're a beginner. Now, if you're advanced, knowing which volume to do, like I can go on and on and on and talk about programming and volume, but the concepts somewhat remain similar, but it all depends on what shape you're in and how advanced you are, how efficient you are at lifting. So that's too broad of a question to really answer for that group of people. Oh, and the second part of that was mobility. So mobility, you need to think about the muscles around the joint, their ability to fire in really compromised positions. So we're going to talk about the compromised position. The most important one is where your femur is pulled really close to your torso and your calf is pulled really close to your hamstring. That's going to be the front squat or the catch for the clean or the overhead squat. That's the most compromised position that we can physically get into when snatching and clean and jerking. So the idea is, how can we get into that position while supporting weight over our head or in the front rack? You have to build your ability to do that with no weight at all, with limited amount of pressure on those joints, just getting used to telling the body like, hey, I'm going to be in this position a lot more now that I'm training weightlifting. I have a video the 5-minute squat routine. It's super easy. You just find a way to sit in a deep squat more throughout the day. From there, you want to learn how to activate those muscles as soon as possible from those positions. I talked about this in the video I did with Omar Isaf. It's linked on his channel. But basically, you're in a very compromised position in that low squat. And it doesn't mean that we're not going to use the legs and just immediately use the back. You want to use the full leg when you're standing up. That is I would say that's 50% of mobility. Mobility, you have that flexibility aspect, but it's the ability to utilize as many musculatures as you can in those compromised positions. Coughlin, Foster, balancing physique and weightlifting. And I would assume that's just like balancing, trying to have a good body composition and weightlifting. You know, body composition, it's always going to be the same thing, taking care of the little stuff and getting into healthier habits. So I would focus mainly on protein intake, trying to get 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight, and then focus on calories from there rather than focusing on all 3 macros. If you're someone that is good with really strict dieting regimens, then go ahead and keep doing that. And it shouldn't really change your bottom line when you're snatching and clean and jerking. This is where it gets into a tricky situation. I don't know you. I don't know your fitness. I don't know what level of skill you're at with the snatch and the clean and jerk. But what I can say is if you want to be better at the snatch and the clean and jerk, that's got to be your focus. You can't want to be the best possible power lifter, best possible bodybuilder, and the best possible weightlifter you can be. At some point, you're going to be really frustrated when none of those things are good, when you know they could be better. Long story short, focus on getting enough protein, limiting calories rather than being really strict, and then always focus on being better at the snatch and the clean and jerk. Tebow, MC, when in a competitive phase, how much volume should be kept for hypertrophy? Not that much. Not that much at all. And again, you have to think about adaptation and what you're going for. If you're preparing for competition, you shouldn't be trying to make adaptations in hypertrophy. So you shouldn't be trying to gain muscle when you're close to competition. You have to think about your body's ability to recover as like a piece of a pie. You want all of the pie to go towards snatching and clean and jerking. And the more that you give to other things, the harder it is to focus on the thing that you want to do well. Once we get towards competition, it's specificity. That's it. We want to snatch and clean and jerk well. Maybe some maintenance of work with hypertrophy. You know, every once in a while you can add in like a hard push-up session or whatever is comfortable for you. But it's really important to understand competitive phases are very important. That's all we're focusing on is the competition. It's all about adaptation and how you spread the adaptation throughout all of your training. Lee Bishop asks, how to improve and self-regulate without a coach? Again, another very good question, and something that I talk about a lot is self-regulation or auto-regulation with your training. The main thing is you have to determine where you're going. Where do you want to compete? What shape are you currently in? For me, if I'm starting up a cycle, I know that I'm not in that good of shape. So I know what minimums to expect, and they're much lower than the minimums that I would expect if I was in shape. For example, when I start training for a competition, I'm 12 weeks away, I would set my minimums at like 100 kilos to 105 kilos. When I'm near competition, I would set my minimums to 115 to 125 kilos, and that's in the snatch. For you, the most important thing is know where you're going and know what to expect of yourself, and then focus on the minimum training that you need to get some sort of adaptation, and then when you want to overreach, you overreach. This auto-regulation is a concept that comes with a lot of training and understanding your body and understanding how a weight is going to feel before you go and snatch it or clean and jerk it. This is a great question from Joe Lipworth, how to get back into training after lockdown. And that goes really well with the last question I just answered. The short answer is very carefully. At this time, nothing matters more than the saying that Max and I always say is, keep your expectations low, but your standards very high. Do not expect to lift the maximum weights that you used to lift. Don't even expect to lift in the same ballpark, in the same universe as those. But have the standard of moving that is absolutely perfect. This is an amazing time to come back and be like, man, I am so weak. I'm horribly weak right now, but I just don't give a shit because I'm going to move whatever weight is on this bar perfectly. Shove your ego down into the ground and smother it and lift well. I promise you it will pay off. All right, so Eric Othern, best way to ensure I don't crash after snatches in a competition. That's a great question because I've actually done that quite a bit. The main thing you have to do is start having very intense clean and jerk sessions, potentially longer sessions in general. While you're practicing for a competition, you can train with a big break in between the snatch and the clean and jerk, like anywhere from 10 to 20 minutes. You can eat some carbs before the snatch and the clean and jerk. That's most likely what you're gonna do in competition anyways. God, that fucking bird is so annoying, dude. Thoughts on conjugate method? That's exactly what I was saying. You know, we essentially, as weightlifters, are doing conjugate method, but we're always having dynamic effort across the entire thing. So it's a little bit different structure. All right, guys. Thank you for watching this self-absorbed endeavor. I'm hoping that you could gain some sort of insight after this video. I tried to go completely uncut, but my camera cut at like 24 minutes or something for no reason. But yeah, you know, I've been doing like a lot of kind of this thought on where I'm going with this channel and what's going on now and how weird everything is. And I'm just really grateful that you guys are still paying attention. So if you've made it this far, thank you so much. And I'll see you on the next one.
Hey, shut up! Come on, man.